Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Altenew. It's a little bit different. We are eventually going to be painting one of these pages from the watercolor coloring book, but I also wanted to show you, this is a video I had intended to make for a long time, is like filling up my pans. So here, this is a full pan, not a half pan, and this is their metallic watercolor inks. And like you can just pop them out, and then the one on the right is empty, and it's empty when you buy it. So I just went online. Oh, I pulled out my brushes too. So the fine brushes, the round, these Altenew has all kinds of different brushes. I'm going to be using a smaller one today. And then quite some time ago, they released their own watercolor line, like tube watercolors. And I have the original release and then the additional colors, but because I just have the palette, like it doesn't come with the pans to fill, so I just picked some up pretty inexpensive, and then you can just pop them in. Now I went with half pans, but you could get the full pans like you saw with the other one, where you could just, you know, whichever kind of works for you. I think there is room for 24 in here, and you can see that that metal is just kind of springy, so you just kind of push them in and it will hold them in place. Also, you can get some half pans that do have a magnet, like a magnetic tape on the bottom to hold them in place. So then as far as the colors go, like how I decided to fill them up, I just went with the way that they had them arranged on the website in their bundle, and that worked pretty well. So here, filling them is really pretty easy. These are 8 milliliter containers, so even just filling them up, like you still have a considerable amount left. And I'm just going in basically rainbow order. I do want to note that you can just fill them up like this and leave them. But my intention is to do them in 2 different layers because you can get air bubbles trapped in there. Now you can go in with like a toothpick or a pin, a needle, and kind of like stir them up and then tuck them into the corners. Or you could just leave them as is. I did mine here. Like I said, I filled them up about halfway, maybe a little bit more, and then I'm just going to let them dry, and then I'll go back in with a second layer, and then I'll be able to use these for a very, very long time. You don't use up very much watercolor when you're painting with it. So, and then obviously I have 6 little spots left, which gives me some room to grow, you know, if they do another release. I like to give myself like a little map, a key, if you will, go back to our school days, which shows me what the colors look like when they're watered out. So I have just cut a piece of their cold press watercolor paper that tends to be what I prefer, and I'm just going to go in. This is the same size as my palette, so I'll be able to tuck it into the lid, and I'm just using a fine liner that's not going to run with water. That's, you know, just a fine tip marker that's going to be waterproof. And then I'm going in, doing 2 lines, and then I'm going to section these out. These are about 3/4 of an inch. And then in between them, I am going to I'm using a Copic marker, but you could also just use a Sharpie, whatever alcohol marker you have. And this is going to show us kind of our opacity. So here I'm just going to go in and just use a regular pen to label them, and I am doing them in the order that I filled my pans. So that way at a quick glance, I will be able to tell which color is which. And then from here, I'm going to go in and add in a little bit of water. This is a little bit tricky because I haven't let my watercolors dry down, which means they're still wet. So I kind of found it best to put the water down first and then pick up a little bit of pigment and bring it down toward the bottom and then let it kind of fade off as it moved toward the top. And we're just going to go through and do each individual color, so that way I will know what they look like at first glance, and then I will also know kind of how chalky they are or how much filler they have in them based on their opacity. These are all pretty transparent. The one, which is totally expected, is the titanium white. That one obviously has, is less transparent, more opaque. That's no big surprise. It's a white watercolor. But the rest of them are pretty transparent. I have painted with these before. I just never filled my pans up the first time because I didn't have them, and the second time because I had them but I was too lazy to do to do it. So and then after this we will be painting one of the florals from the watercolor coloring book, which is actually on sale right now for $20. I do try to tell you guys, like, when I see a good deal, and they're doing today, the 6th, 7th, and 8th of January, they're doing a free gift of alcohol markers. So if you've never tried their artist markers and you wanted to give it a try, they're giving away like kind of a starter set with orders over $49. And then of course they have their regular weekly sales that will run from today being Monday through Friday. So that's that. Also, if you've come here just to see how to do the pans, that's great. After this is done, this will probably be where you want to veer off, because we are going to have a little bit of story time. And then part of the reason why this video was just a smidge longer is while I was doing my painting and putting my cards together, my little jelly bean came up and wanted to paint. So there is like a little special guest at the end of the video. So here is a close-up, and you can see, that black line, how transparent they are. This will fit just right in my lid. And then because of the way that their palettes are built, it has like that buffer piece where you can mix. And so I will close that over the paints, and then the portion of our little key, our mapped out key, will sit there, not on the actual color. So this is the one that I chose to go ahead and paint. I chose the gray version. In this book, there's a black outline version and a gray version. The gray version is for more like a sketch or a no-line look. And because I am a card maker, like that, I like to watercolor, don't get me wrong, but I am a card maker. So I always try to pick the ones that I know, like, I can cut in half and turn into cards, which is what I will be doing with both of these at the end of it. You could, just trim it down. It's a 5x7 piece. And you could trim it down just to be one card front if you didn't want to cut it in half. That's totally fine. But I am cheap and I like to get 2 cards for one. So I try to come up with other ways in which I can stretch the image. So I started with the centers. And for that, I used the gold ochre and the permanent yellow deep. And then I'm also going to mix a brown. There isn't like a good brown, but if you know anything about color theory, mixing 2 complementary colors is going to give us a brown. And I chose to go with the red and green, so it would give me a warmer brown. So I started with the red, I mixed in the green. It was a little too heavy on the green. So I just added a little bit more red until I was happy with the brown that it was creating. And then I will also go in and dab that into the stamen as well. So we have the permanent yellow deep, which is our brightest, the gold ochre, which is more of a mid-tone in this particular application, and then that reddish, that warmer brown that we've mixed using our, what is it? Tuladine red, and I think I used olive green. So just tapping those in, and later on, you remember those metallics I showed you at the beginning of the video? I will be going back in and using those to do some highlights for the stamen. Obviously, if you're super into realism, you don't have to do the metallics, but I'm not super into realism. I'm super into shiny things. So that is why I chose to do that. So let's talk about how I prefer to do my watercolor. So there's two ways that I do it. The first way is going in with the darkest color, laying that down where I want it to be the darkest, and then getting just clean water, blotting the bristles off at the base so there's not a lot of extra moisture, and then putting it down at the edge of the petal and bringing that clean water back to the pigment and letting it spread. Then from there, I can add my pigment and just let it kind of run. The other way that I like to do it is putting down clean water and then adding my pigment where I want it to be the darkest and letting it spread from there. That is the majority of the way that I am going to paint this piece, is putting down clean water and then adding my pigment and just kind of letting it flow. This is less controlled, but I love the blooms that it gives from the pigment just doing its own thing. So that is why I prefer to do it that way. I will say that it does take longer because you have to let the pieces dry. So I'm not using a ton of water. And like before, I told you want to blot the base of the bristles. So for the most part, I'm pretty good with knowing how much water I need to pick up, but that's just come from practice. If you are still new, and you'll even see me sometimes, do it where I've just picked up too much water and I know it, you're just looking for a sheen of water for it to be really controlled. The more water you have, the less control you have. The less water you have, the more control. So I tend to want mine, especially in these types of paintings where, I'm trying to reserve the line, like the sketch that is there. I definitely am trying to be more controlled with it. I apologize for my camera. It'll come back around in just a minute. I think it's just because of all the white space. But anyway, so as long as your floral is wet, you don't want to paint next to it. And also, as long as it's wet, you can continually add pigment to it. So here you'll see, as I have sped this up because this is a little bit time consuming. But as long as it is still got that sheen and the moisture, I can go back in and darken up those shadow areas. For the most part, for the flowers, I used the quinacridone magenta and violet. I like those two blended together, so I would put down the magenta first to let the pink kind of be the color that was on the edges, and then I would go back in, I would add in some more magenta or some more violet. But because we're working with such little water to have so much control, this does dry pretty quickly. If you have more water on there where it's like bubbled up from the surface, you're definitely not going to be able to work as fast, which is fine if that's, as long as you're okay with it. But if you're trying to work quickly, you definitely want to have less water. So with that said, you can see I'm going back in, I'm doing multiple layers to be able to get the darkness that I would like. And then once I get us to a spot with those buds where I don't have anywhere else I can paint, every, thing that's next to each other is wet, then I will move on to the larger florals. Now, for these, the petals are larger, so we are going to need more water, but we're still just looking for that sheen. So I'm using just a number 2 round brush because larger paint brushes hold more water, and that makes me feel less in control of it. I do have a tendency to use a smaller brush, but there are other artists who are more professional watercolor artists that do prefer to use bigger brushes. So just do whatever you prefer. I like to use as small as a brush as I can get away with, just because I feel like that gives me more control. So with that said, we're going to go in, we're going to do the painting, and you'll see, like, especially with this one, there's parts where the floral is kind of like flipped over itself. The edges are, and you want those edges to be lighter. You have to create that darkness, that depth for any sort of dimension, and so that the florals don't look flat. So we have to have just that little bit of darkness. Watercolors traditionally dry back softer than you would think that they are. So that is why sometimes we do see that multiple layers is necessary. So that way we can get really good darkness, really good dimension. So especially with these larger ones and you have multiple petals, there are some definite ones that need to be moved to the back in order to showcase the ones that are more toward the front and achieve the dimension. So anywho, so I told you guys recently we had talked about how we took little Jelly Bean out for her little snow day, and that was super fun. Yesterday was like the mad Christmas cleanup. Like, is anybody else? Are you just in it? Is your stuff down yet? Like my husband really is the rock star of getting the Christmas stuff down. He's always the one who is like right on top of it. Because after the holidays, like I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed with all of the things we just had to do that I'm like, I can't add anything else to my list. But so we did manage to get Christmas taken down, this past weekend, and we got the vast majority of it done during Jelly Bean's nap time, so it wasn't too crazy, but we did still have some stuff. My Peanut, my oldest, he does a Christmas village. I don't know, do any of you guys have those? My middle sister also does like a Christmas village, but she doesn't put up like on a table. She puts hers on top of her cupboards, which I think is so fun because then she has like all these little light up villages on top of her cabinets. But she also dresses up her cabinets like presents, which is like, it's very inexpensive, but really very fun. So she does a ribbon kind of like from the top and the bottom, and then puts a bow in the center of each one of her cabinet doors. And so then they look like they are wrapped presents. And that is so fun. She puts up multiple trees too. She really is like fantastic. She's the go-to for house decoration. Like if there's any question about decorations or organization, like that, Kim is the go-to. But Peanut likes to put up his little snow village, and I do try, like I don't always buy him a new house. This was a couple of years ago. I think somebody was getting rid of a huge haul off of Facebook Marketplace. Pretty inexpensive, so I went out and got those for him. And so because of that, it's been a few years since I got him anything for his village, because we got so much in one kind of swoop. But I think the last thing that I bought him was his little ice skating rink, which we didn't even have room to put out this year. So normally he has like a little side table that he can put all of his village up, and two of the pieces are grams. Like two of the houses are from Graham's. And I think several of Kim's are also from Graham as well. Now, they were snowbirds, so her village was up in Florida. So I don't necessarily have too many memories of it, because I don't think she had it when they were up here and we were doing Christmases up here. But anyway, so he has kind of two pieces that my sister has given him that were Graham's, and he would normally set up the whole thing on his, it's, what do they call that? It's not an entry table. It's a console table, like the long skinny ones. But this year, obviously, little Miss Jellybean is old enough to reach it and play with the pieces, and he doesn't want her to play with the pieces. So I cleaned off my entry table, and I was like, just, put up what you can here. And so we did. We had to get a little extra extension cord, but that was no big deal. But he couldn't put up the whole thing. And then this year, because it's been a while since I bought him a piece, I bought him a little farm building, and then some of his stocking stuffers it's like a little, like a lady feeding some chickens, and then some horses that are, like, tied to their little post. And what's the other one? Oh, it's a dog up on a bird bath. He's like drinking out of the bird bath. So some extra little pieces for him to be able to put up next year. So that was fun. So we did have to clean up that, which is, I am a little sad to see that go. And he put up his own tree this year. So we had 2 trees, whereas we normally only have 1. Let's go back to the card. So here, for the most part, the floral painting is done. I will go back in and, like I said, darken up some of those areas to get some dimension, but I have moved on to the greenery. Now, they have phthalo green, which is like, it's a green, it's a true green. And then they have the olive green as well. So what I ended up doing was using the olive and then mixing in some of the yellow to get more of a yellow green, which is what I prefer. And then, so for one of them, I mixed in a little bit more yellow and a little bit more water. And then the other one, I did a little bit more olive and a little bit less water to change the color just a little bit. So for the most part, when I'm going in and putting in the color, I'm starting with that lighter yellow color, filling in, just like I have been, the clean water, and then dropping in the yellow green. This part, the only thing that I will tell you with like these thinner pieces, like the stems, it might seem like counterintuitive, like I have told you in the beginning, less water means more control, but you have to have enough moisture in the tip of your paintbrush to be able to paint smoothly. If you are going to paint and it is leaving like sketchy lines, you don't have enough moisture. So that's something to kind of play around with, maybe with a scrap piece of paper, just so you get comfortable with it. So that way you aren't having to go back in and do those thin lines, because each time you're going over it, it gets more and more difficult to keep it thin where it can kind of blow out. And then once I am happy with the shading of the actual leaves, I did go in with a little bit of the darker color and fill in those details. Now that my flowers are dry, I'm also going to go back in with the darker mixture of the quinacridone violet and a little bit of the magenta, and do the details for the flowers as well. These are just going to indicate some shading lines, some directional lines, give the florals a little bit more movement. For the most part, like I can still see the lines, even though they're a faint gray. But even if you were just painting your own, you could just go by kind of what you feel Here, I felt like I got a little bit dark, so I did go back in with a little bit of water and blend it out. And then from here, we're going to do the background. This part is scary. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. It is a little bit scary because I wanted to fill up the space. Remember, my intention is to cut this in half. Now, if you're not cutting it in half, you could leave it like this, as, if you wanted to turn it into a card. I wanted a very kind of fluid background where, maybe it gave the impression, it gave the idea of some florals in the background. And so that is why I brought in that 1-inch wide brush to put some clean water in the background. And then from there, I'll use a smaller brush to bring it in so that it's a little bit tighter towards the actual design. I don't want to create like a white halo around my painting, but I don't want to risk that I am going to have my painting run either. So what you see me doing here is just dropping in that lighter yellow green, dropping in a little bit of the pinks and the purples. I'm not being too specific about it. I'm just creating this nice kind of soft wash background. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go back in, and I'm not painting flowers. I don't want to pretend like that's what I'm doing. I'm putting in some suggestive shapes, some blobs, flower-like blobs that will maybe look like some florals that are a little out of focus. Same thing with the green and the leaf shapes. Like, I'm just putting in some suggestions of those things, so that way when I go to do the other portion where I will fill out the rest of my card, this is contributing to the overall design. If you don't like this, just like if you don't like spatters like I'm doing here, don't do them. It's okay. It's whatever you're feeling like. Or maybe you're like, hey, I don't want to do pinks and greens. I want to do blue. Great. That would be beautiful as well. So here, this is where I'm bringing in the metallics. I am reconstituting that with a little bit of water, picking up the gold, and then using that number 2 round brush to drop that gold onto the stamen, just so it has a little bit of shine. Then I'm going to dry down the whole piece. You can see that this is pretty warped because I did that full background. In order to fix this, I like to put my piece in between. Here I'm trying to figure out the background. This is the beautiful peonies and the nostalgic florals. I ended up going with the nostalgic florals, but either one of them would have been fine. But here I have a piece of copy paper and I put my painting in between them, and then I run it through my die cutting machine. And the reason that I put it in the copy paper is so just what I showed you, all of those impressions that sometimes get left behind, the copy paper saves them. Then, because this is 5 by 7, I went in and trimmed it at, what is that? 3.5. Yeah, that's 7. So now it is 5 by 3.5. And here is how I'm going to fill up the rest of it so that my card design is balanced versus just my painting. And so I have these larger ones. Like I said, the nostalgic florals look pretty simple. Or I'm sorry, pretty similar to the florals that I have painted. And so all I'm going to do here is I'm going to ink them up. This is the, what is it? The antique gold? I think it is antique gold. Pigment ink from Altenew after I treat it with my anti-static tool. And then I'm going to use the embossing powder in the same color, that antique gold. Anywhere that I maybe got some overlapping of the stamping, I can just go in and knock off that heat embossing. And then I will heat set this. That metallic is going to add to the overall kind of like feel of this painted piece, that softness, but it still has that shimmer, which I love. So I did this with both of them just to fill out my cards, and I'm happy with the way that that is looking. With that, I pulled out some of their cardstock. I'm using Forest Glades and Deep Iris. That's matching the color that I already have picked, as well as their brushed gold. And so here I am Gina K-ing it, you guys. I am matting. So many mats. And just to make sure that my watercolor cardstock does stick to the brushed gold cardstock, I am using their ultra sticky double-sided tape, but I like the wiggle room that the liquid glue gives me. So in addition to that, I'm going to put some liquid adhesive on the back here, and then I will line this up with really just like 1/8 of an inch border. And I prefer to do this where I just line it up in the corner of the sheet and then I can trim it off. So I only have to cut 2 sides. But I did the gold, then I did the forest glades, and then I did the iris, and I'm mounting them all on white. Like, I went back to my scrapbook roots of mats on mats on mats, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not mad about it. So then I used, here's where Jelly, you can see her little arm. She wants to paint a rainbow, okay? And I told her I had to finish my cards first, but she's sitting on my lap while I am finishing my cards, and she is touching all of the things. So I'm sure those of you who are parents or grandparents can relate to this on a very real level. Like, all I'm trying to do is just put my cards together so I can be done with it. And she is not interested in me doing that. She is only interested in her painting her rainbow. So I die cut my sentiment out of white and the shadow out of vellum, and then I white heat embossed onto that same gold cardstock and trimmed that out in a label. So both of these say happy birthday. They're just flip-flopped. So for this one, the birthday is the heat embossed portion, and for the next one, the horizontal card, the happy is the heat emboss portion, and that's the simple sentiments, I think. And then now my child is obsessed with glitters just like I am. So she keeps trying to take my glitters. She keeps trying to take my glitters when I'm trying to put them on my card. So I tried to talk her into like, hey, can you help mommy put the glitters on? So she does help me just a little bit, but then she's right back at trying to steal them out of the container. But anyway, so I did put on some rhinestones just to accent those. And then from there, those basically finished off the cards. I didn't add any other shimmer or anything. We have the metallic from the embossing and the rhinestones, as well as the metallic border in the sentiment. And then that's it. That's both cards. So if you would like to stick around for my sweet little jelly beans painting, that will be at the end. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.
A big one.
A big one? All right, this is your dirty water. Okay, let me get you a clean cuppy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we don't need to put our fingers in it.
Why?
Okay, here. And let's get your paper towel. Okay, put these up here. This one's your dirty, that one's your clean. Remember that, okay?
A big paintbrush,
Yeah.
please.
All right, here.
Mom, why is that pacifier there?
Honestly, I think you brought it in here one day and then just forgot about it.
Oh yeah, I'll put it back in my bedroom.
Okay. All right, here's your paper towel.
Okay.
Okay.
Big paintbrush, please. I need some glitters.
Okay, let's do our painting first. Okay. Oh, beautiful. Rinse. That's our clean waters. Killing me. All right, what color is this?
Blue. I think pink.
Red.
Red. Good. Math.
Oh, you want blue now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's very pretty.
Thanks.
What's next?
Green.
Green.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I like how they're touching. Careful. Watch our palette, okay? Do you want Mommy to get up that red? Or you want to leave it there?
I think I want to.
You want to leave it there?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, what's next?
I don't know. I think
That's purple.
yeah, purple. No,
Okay.
I do it.
Okay.
I don't want to mix colors.
Well, then don't put them right on top of each other if you don't want them to mix. Okay, you want to try the purple again without touching the green?
No, I do
Don't put it back in the water. You paint with it first.
It mixed red.
Yeah. And now a little bit of green.
Yeah. I'm telling ya.
You're doing a good job, baby.
Yeah, I'm just telling you. I'm just kidding ya.
You are funny.
Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah, I think you are too. Rinse, rinse, rinse.
Hey, I'm just killing ya.
I sure do love you.
I'm killing you. Mommy, I'm killing you.
You are killing me.